Hey, everybody in serial killer country. My name is Brittany Ransom, and this is When Killers Get Caught, a podcast devoted to deep dives into the killers we love to learn about. But in season 3, we've been taking one-on-one with people who are closely linked to crime or have been affected by their connection to the justice system. And today we have the opportunity to talk to someone who was prosecuted over 1,000 criminals as a former federal prosecutor who worked with the FBI. His name is Neama Rahmani. He's currently the president and co-founder of West Coast Trial Lawyers in Los Angeles, California. And if you're a big fan of watching news coverage or crime TV, there's a chance you've probably seen him already commentating on the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, Britney Spears' conservatorship, Court TV, pretty much every major news station. And most recently, I recognized Neema based on him talking about one of his entertainment cases right now. I'm really excited to have you here today and talk about your life and your experiences over the last 20 years. Welcome to the podcast, Neema.
Brittany, thank you so much for having me. What a great introduction. I'm super excited to be on.
So I have to ask you about this because it's huge news in my circle. I'm a plus size lady, and so I've been all about the body positivity and love over the many years. And you are representing several of Lizzo's former dancers, and that's a huge deal among me and my friends. I actually read a Deadline article about you like a week or two ago where you said, "I've prosecuted drug cartels, so we have no plan to back down." And then you said, "Let's see if Singer can actually try a case in the courtroom instead of the media."
I'm laughing because, I always try to keep it professional. I like Marty. We've litigated cases in the past.
Uh-huh.
We have other cases together right now. He's representing one of Olivia Wilde or Jason Sudeikis, maybe both. We're representing one of their former employees or nanny. So, you know, oftentimes it's a small legal community. We go up against the same people.
Okay.
But what I would say is Lizzo, her spokespeople, and her lawyer, they're taking a very aggressive, frankly, mean stance
Right.
against our clients. And we have four of them calling them all liars, saying none of this happened. When we filed this case, I thought it'd go in one of two ways. I thought that, Lizzo would come out, maybe apologize, say she's made some mistakes, we're not perfect, we'll do things better going forward. But she's denying that any of this happened and calling our clients liars,
Yeah. What do you think
calling us
about that
ambulance
statement
chasers.
she put out?
I was surprised. Yeah, I thought it was very tone deaf, victim shaming. You're talking about, she's all about positivity and advocating for women and plus size women and a woman of color. But these are our clients
Right.
and she's calling them all liars. So I was surprised. I thought she would take a different approach, right? We've seen celebrities recently when they mess up. Look at, Ashton Kutcher
Mm-hmm.
and Mila Kunis, right? They wrote letters of support for Danny Masterson. They came out and apologized. We saw Drew Barrymore
Right.
cross the picket line. She apologized. That's what I was expecting. But, sometimes, look, people
And
they double down on their lies, and it's a narcissism or whatever the case may be. But it was a surprising
well, now
reaction.
you've also got the scary word, countersuit, because that scares me. I mean, what do you say to your clients when you hear from this huge name in media, "We're coming after you next"?
Well, look, they have to win first, and I have no problem trying this case because I believe our clients. I believe their stories. I think jurors are going to like them and believe them as well. And I think Lizzo is going to be exposed, and more people are coming forward. There's people who have said they want to be witnesses. There's people that have claims, but maybe they're outside the statute of limitations,
Mm.
but they can talk about some of this conduct. And there's going to be more clients as well. I mean, you're going to see, Brittany. This isn't the end. Usually, when people mistreat others, it's not just one or two or
Right.
three. That tends to be who they are. And I think people are starting to understand that the Lizzo you see when the cameras are rolling is not the Lizzo, the employer, that people that I actually had to work with her, what they experienced was very
Well,
different.
you've got a lot of experience, I guess, with dealing with celebrities now. It's a small frame for me because I'm just a little influencer, but I've come in contact with people and they're like, "Wow, you're really nice," and I'm like, "Most people aren't." Apparently not. Apparently, a lot of people are really terrible in Hollywood, and I had no idea. Do you
Yeah,
experience
it's
that?
unfortunate, and it's unfortunately people in positions of power sometimes misuse that power.
Mm.
And instead of bringing others up with them, they kick them down. And I'm
Hmm.
not saying it's just limited to one particular case or client, but this is a problem in Hollywood. And, for many years it was rich old white men,
Right.
but it's not limited to that. There are people who don't fall in that category and they engage in misconduct because they think they can, because they think that, frankly, their employees should be happy to be there, to be happy to have a
Right.
job.
What an amazing
And,
opportunity.
you
You got
know,
to be on that TV show that won an Emmy.
exactly, you're on Lizzo's reality TV show. And, like I said, these are dancers that probably wouldn't have had an opportunity elsewhere in Hollywood. And that's something that they've admitted. Lizzo gave them their chance. And that's why they were so heartbroken to be treated the way they were.
Right. Well, one of the things you mentioned to me in our private chat is that your firm only accepts about 5 to 10% of the cases that come across your desk. And you said you have about 25 lawyers there. So, how do you decide? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people knocking on your door.
We get hundreds of calls every day,
Wow.
and we can only accept a small number because, well, for a few reasons. We only want to take righteous
Hmm.
cases. We don't want to take cases that we can't help people, or cases that we can't win. I like to be honest with my
Hmm.
clients. And the other is, there's different types of firms. Some firms will sign a bunch of clients, maybe send some demand letters, and they might drop the case if they don't get
Oh,
paid.
wow.
When we take a case, we anticipate taking it all the way to trial. That's how we think. So, when I meet with a client that says they've been mistreated by their employer, I tell them honestly, we may have to try this case. We're going to prepare the case to go to trial. Now, not that many cases go to trial.
Okay.
Oftentimes, the defendants settle. The clients may not want to tell their story, in a very public way at
Right.
trial. But, the reason, I told Lizzo's lawyers to bring it and let's try the case is, I have clients who have been very open about telling their story and they're happy to do so in a courtroom. Not all clients feel the same way. So now that Lizzo is saying that she wants to try the case, I'm thinking, great, we're going to have a trial and the entire world can decide who's telling the truth.
Right.
I
Because
could tell you, Brittany,
with a settlement,
sorry to
well, no, I was
interrupt
going to
you.
say with a settlement,
Yeah,
doesn't that mean
settlement.
it can be closed?
Yeah, it's all
Mm.
confidential, and usually there's a payment in exchange for non-disparagement or confidentiality. That's oftentimes how these work. So when you have the opportunity to go all the way to trial as a lawyer, that's something that you look forward to. That's why you went to law school. So, there might be some lawyers that want to settle, they're afraid of trial, but you know, Lizzo's lawyers, they're talking to the wrong person. I love trying cases. Look, I like trials so much. I go on TV almost every day, and I'm doing commentary on other people's trials. So don't you think I would like to? I would like to try my own
Hey,
case.
yeah. And my other thing is like since some of these people like Lizzo, huge media personality. I mean, what kind of internet hate or even things mailed to your office, things like that, do you get that from your work?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I could tell you that most of the folks who have been covering the Lizzo case, there's been some nasty things said
Mhm.
publicly, but most people haven't taken that personally, fortunately. Look, it's all business, right? Everyone's entitled to someone to advocate on their behalf.
Mhm.
I would say the most hate I get is from covering the Donald Trump case. It's
Oh,
just, and when I say case, let's say that,
cases.
cases, right? Yeah, he's got 4 criminal cases. He's in the middle of a civil trial right now. So obviously, look, he's a big
Mhm.
story, and I'm a legal commentator. So I'm going to be talking about his cases, and I'm going to say it like it is. It's not political. I'm not saying he's going to win or lose the presidential election. I stay in my lane, but I'm going to be talking about the cases. And there's some people that refuse to believe that there's a possibility that the former president committed a crime or committed multiple crimes. So that's usually where I get most of my kind of hate mail. It's related to the political cases that I cover.
Now, speaking of the Lizzo case, you said her people said they want to go to trial. You want to go to trial. So, reasonably, when do you think we might actually get to see this go to trial?
Well, I think Lizzo's team, they might be talking out of both sides of their mouth. And the
Oh.
reason is they did demand, we demanded a jury trial. They agreed to a jury trial, but they filed an answer and they're trying to get this case moved into a private
Oh,
arbitration.
wow.
So, yeah, obviously we're going to oppose that because we think that the public has a right to know and I believe in our jury system. But they're going to try to, hide this away, have some secret, private arbitration handle this. So we'll see if we do get that trial. I think that's going to be one of the big issues in the
Oh,
case.
okay. Well, we chatted about what you're doing right now, talking about Trump, dealing with Lizzo, and a couple other cases. But I do want to tell our listeners about kind of where you came from. And one of the big things in your bio is you went to UCLA, you graduated from Harvard Law at 22 years old, makes you one of the youngest graduates in 200 years, and then you got recruited into this massive law firm. Can you kind of explain what life was like for you at that moment?
So when I went to law school, it's kind of like the movie The Firm. These big law firms show up and they recruit
Mhm.
you and they offer you a lot of money. I mean, I was, a law student. I was 20 years old. I was making more money than I could possibly dream
Mhm.
of. So I ended up going after law school to one of these firms, 1,000 lawyer firm, massive firm. At the time, it was the largest law firm in Los
Wow.
Angeles. I don't know where things are right now. And, you end up representing corporations that have a lot of money. So my clients were Disney and Marriott and, huge
Yeah,
companies.
on a
But you,
what's it say?
yeah, but you're defending them. You're defending them oftentimes against the little
Aw.
guy or a smaller
Mhm.
company. And, ultimately we were hired by the Catholic Church to represent them in the sex abuse cases. And, I hated it. That's not why I went to law school. And that was sort of the motivation for me to leave.
Ah,
I always wanted to be a prosecutor and become a judge. That was always my career goal.
okay.
So, I was looking to, leave, join the government. The opportunity came up for me to join the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office. But, I didn't have the best experience working at what we call big law, the huge corporations, just because I did not like representing those types of clients. I like helping people and, pursuing justice. And that's something I was able to do as a prosecutor.
Okay, that's definitely your next step. You're federal prosecutor in San Diego. Those got to be two way different worlds.
Oh, completely. The way I describe it is when I was working at the big firm, miserable every day, except the twice a month I got paid.
Oh, wow.
When I was a prosecutor, I was happy every day, except the twice a month I got
Oh,
paid.
no.
So took a huge, huge pay cut, yeah, to pursue justice. And it was awesome. We were on the border. This was, what I thought at the time. It's still continuing, but this was the heyday of drug cartel
Mm.
violence. So we're dealing with drug and human trafficking cases. It was awesome. I loved it. Amazing job. But then I had a couple kids, and then so I had to. I stopped doing the DOJ work. I went to the city of LA, did public corruption and government ethics, campaign finance, election law work for a while, and ultimately started my own firm because I sort of reached a crossroads where I couldn't work for the government anymore just because I had two young kids and childcare costs a lot. My wife's a lawyer for foster
Mm-hmm.
kids, so two government lawyers and two small kids living in LA, we just couldn't really make ends meet financially.
Now, with the work that you did for, as a federal prosecutor in San Diego, I spend most of my time researching the kind of cases that you've prosecuted, and some of them are really intense. There have been times that I stepped away from my computer and was just like, I need a break. I don't want to see any more crime scene photos. I don't want to read anything else from these people. So I guess my big question is, how do you stomach the things that are heinous that were part of that job?
Look, it was hard. I mean, there were certain things that I absolutely hated doing. I did not like child porn cases,
Mm,
and I didn't like sexual abuse of minors cases. Crimes involving children are just really hard. I've handled some of those cases. I didn't
those
like
are the
it.
ones that affect me the
Um,
most too.
yeah, I mean, you're dealing with child victims. I mean, what's worse than a kid that's been the victim of a crime?
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with other types of violence, like some people hate it, some people didn't like massive amounts of drugs or traffic people or, you know, the violence that accompanies all that. But, I liked it. It was interesting. I was working with great agents, federal agents, right? So I was working with FBI or DEA or Customs or Border Patrol. And, we were keeping the American people safe. So certainly a lot better than defending corporations. Absolutely loved it. Greatest job in the world. If it wasn't for finances, I'd probably still be doing that or be sitting on the bench as a judge somewhere.
I gotcha. Well, let's talk about, I guess, some of your really big cases from that time period. I mean, obviously, the huge one is you helped take somebody off of the America's Most Wanted list.
Yeah, so this was someone who was a murderer, drug
Hmm.
kingpin here in California. And he was involved in a drug-related murder, fled to Mexico. So we spent some time looking for
Hmm.
him. And through the help of cooperators, it took a long time, years. We were able to identify where he was in Mexico, literally at a map. We were able to go in there and arrest him. So spent a lot of time working on this case. Was really proud of the work that we did, kind of flipping folks, and ultimately we were able to get one of the more dangerous men in the United States and Mexico and put him behind bars.
I mean, that's major. And the other thing was, I noticed that when you were the director of enforcement for the LA City Ethics Commission, they said that you got some of the highest fines in years in terms of, I guess, finding corruption.
Yeah, so I loved being a prosecutor. When I put the Department of Justice work away, I ended up being the enforcement director at the City of LA Ethics Commission. So that's basically a watchdog that oversees the mayor, all the elected officials, high level employees of the City of LA.
Hmm.
And I was able to oversee a couple big elections. Eric Garcetti's election. I mean, this was a while ago, and we would investigate these candidates, we'd investigate these elected officials, and we'd go after them. So it could be an administrative action. If it was criminal, we'd work with the DA's office to prosecute them. And it really sort of turned out after I left that city of LA, I mean, anyone that lives in LA or is familiar with it, it has had such a problem with corruption. You're talking
Hmm.
about council members, multiple under indictment, going to prison for years, taking bribes. I mean, it's really bad and it continues to get worse. So I did sort of learn and understand, that political side of things and how much really, if you kind of look behind the curtain, how dirty it really is.
Hmm. I remember a case, gosh, had to have been like early 2000, the aughts. So, but I remember it was specifically a police station. There was a woman who was like like a 911 operator, and her daughter was a prostitute, which I don't think she knew at the time. But apparently, almost all of the police officers who worked in that district had seen her, and she was a minor. And I just remember like a lot of people lost their jobs, and then they picked a new police chief, and then that one lost their job too. Like, is that what we're talking about? Those kinds of cases, or even worse?
Yeah, so when you're dealing with that type of corruption, we've gone after a lot of, you know, what we think. I have respect for law enforcement. I'm a former prosecutor, but I mean, there's some law enforcement types that should pay a lot of money or even be behind bars, right? I mean, I believe no one is above the law. I don't care if you're a police officer, you're a president, you're a former president, you're a president's son. I think the law should apply to
Hmm.
everyone. When I was doing the ethics work for the city of LA, I oversaw all the politicians. There was a separate police
Oh,
commission that oversaw
okay.
LAPD. So that was kind of separate. I was dealing with, the mayor, deputy mayor, city attorney, controller, all the city council members. So anyone that was kind of in that world was under my supervision. The police was a whole nother commission with someone just like me that was overseeing them on
We
that side.
definitely needed somebody like you in my state because in our capital, we had an entire slew of politicians who were just using money for random things. Gotta love that.
Unfortunately, it's a tale as old as time. There's power and it can be corrupting here and around the world. So I don't know what the answer is.
Why people in a
Yeah.
town of 50,000 need a private jet anywhere.
Oh,
You
well,
don't
yeah.
need that life.
Yeah. I don't understand that at all. Yeah. No, definitely not.
But like you said, you take a huge risk and you open your own firm. You want to switch gears entirely to personal uh, law. Got to be scary. But you said that you needed to kind of do better for your family. What's that look like?
Yeah. So my wife and I, when basically we couldn't afford to both work for the government. We sat down one day and she told me that one of us needs to get a real job, and that one of us was me. So by real job, I mean go back to the private sector and make money. Actually, I'm gonna be honest. I almost went back to the firm.
Okay.
They talked to me about coming back, and you know there was a lot of money
Mhm.
involved. And fortunately, at the time, my current partner, his name's Alan. He actually recruited me out of law school.
Okay.
He was a young attorney at the time at the same
Mhm.
firm, big law, young attorney. He recruited me out of law school, and he left a few years after I joined, and he started his own firm. Small firm. He teamed up with a public defender buddy of his. He was doing everything: family law, immigration, criminal, whatever came through the door. But more and more, he started doing plaintiff's work, so employment, personal injury, representing people that something bad had happened to them, and doing a contingency, which means wasn't charging hourly or a
Mhm.
retainer, just a percentage of what he recovered. So it happened that at the time that I was looking to go back, he approached me and he convinced me to start a new firm with him. He's like, listen, don't go back. You're not going to like defending corporations. You're not going to like defending criminals. We can represent victims. We can represent plaintiffs. And I said, Alan, like, why would I do that? I'm not going to be that guy on some billboard or bus bench. That's just not me. It's like, no, it's not going to be like that. You're going to be helping people. It's like being a prosecutor, but actually getting paid. And that kind of goes back to that 5-10%. We have the luxury now of choosing our clients, choosing our cases. If I don't feel it's a righteous case, I'm not going to take it. We have plenty of business. We can refer them to other lawyers or refer them to the local bar association. We'll help them out.
Okay.
But unless I personally believe in the case, and if I think it's a just case worth pursuing, I'm not going to take it.
Okay. One of my things that I've been doing lately is I like your LinkedIn posts, and you
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
And I kind of scroll through, and I'm like, look at all this stuff they're doing. This is awesome. I saw that it said that you
I'm a nerd. What can I say?
listen. It's the best kind of people. Um, I mean, gosh, there are so many. Like you sued Charlie Sheen. That was another big one.
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah, he had Lizzo's lawyer, so that was
No,
one.
no way. And Marty Singer too.
Yeah, he had Singer. Yeah, so Singer represented Sheen on that one. So yeah, like I said, he's someone that I've dealt with, and again, sometimes it gets look, I always try to keep it professional, but on the other hand, I want to protect my clients, both in the courtroom and in the media. So, um, like I said, hopefully we can keep things professional. But yeah, I mean, I've dealt with Marty and his team before. So
And then there was the case where you represented female inmates who'd been assaulted by a sheriff's deputy while in police custody.
yes, so we've done that. We've done a lot of sexual assault cases. We've done a lot of police misconduct cases, civil rights cases, death cases where officers have killed someone. So I mean, we've done a lot. I've sued the Department of Justice, my former employer, for
Wow.
race
I
discrimination.
need to know about that
Yeah,
one.
yeah. So I mean, we sued. It was someone that was retaliated against because the allegations were he was retaliated against because his wife was Latina, and at the time there were some allegations of racism at the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Department of Justice. So he sided with the victims of race discrimination. And his supervisors changed his review, put a letter of reprimand in his file for no
Wow.
reason. So, like, when I said prosecuted cartel, I didn't even sue the Department of Justice. We sued, um, we filed, we were litigating, and then, we won the Department of Justice. They took it all back. They took the letter of reprimand back, changed his evaluation, everything to what it was before the retaliation. They paid for all our costs, everything.
So what
So,
happens for that guy though at that point? I mean, you don't feel comfortable working there anymore.
but you know what? I think now they know. Look, if they mess with him again, just because he's a white guy doesn't mean that he's a lawyer himself. That he's not going to lawyer up and he's going to fight back. So if we feel that there's a case that's a righteous case, I don't care who it is, who the defendant is, we are going to represent the victim because that's what we do.
One of your recent posts on LinkedIn that I really like was your post about Kanye West, or correction, Yay.
Oh yeah.
How twisted up you and Ye are because of the multiple cases that you've had against him or defending people who worked for him.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time litigating against Ye or Kanye, the artist formerly known as Kanye West. So we represent several of the teachers of the Donda Academy that he founded,
Hmm.
folks that he recruited and ultimately fired because they stood up for the students. If you kind of read the allegations in the complaint, Kanye didn't like windows. Kids were eating on the floor or eating sushi. And the teacher said, well, this isn't right. This isn't safe. There was exposed electrical wire. And when they complained, he would just fire
Well, the
them.
thing is,
We also
we're
represent,
mandated
yeah, sorry.
reporters. We have to say things if we think kids are in danger. It's kind of part of the job.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you know, teachers, doctors, I mean, you have to report any safety issue, any allegation of abuse. So, we're fortunate to be representing those former employees of Kanye and Donda.
Hmm.
We have another employee of his that was, kind of a contractor, security guard that we recently filed. Not a teacher, a different case. I was a legal commentator on the Kanye and Kim documentary for HBO. So, part of it's just kind of being in LA and around all this small legal community. But I've had to spend a lot of time learning about Kanye West recently.
Hmm. I maybe more than you ever wanted to know. I'm sure.
I'm sure, when it's folks like Lizzo and Kanye, usually it's not the first and it won't be the last.
Mm.
So,
That's sad though, especially like people that a lot of people look up to. And I know they say, never meet your idols, they'll let you down, yada yada. But there's not a like the whole country's kind of in a crisis right now financially. I mean, you see what's going on with the state of the country and figuring out our finances that was supposed to be done 3 months ago. But you know what I mean? So like people want a little bit of something good to listen to or hold on to. And then you find out that the person you like or the music you like is made by somebody who's awful.
it is sad, I agree. But, this is really our system of justice. So, look, I'm not going to put Kanye West or Lizzo in jail. It's not a criminal
Mhm.
case, right? So when someone harms someone, right? Someone sexually harasses someone discriminates against their race or their medical condition, our civil justice system, all there is the payment of money damages. That's it.
Mhm.
There's nothing else I can do to Kanye and Lizzo. I can't make Lizzo eat a dirty banana, out of one of the, sex show workers in Amsterdam. Like some of the things she was making, some of her employees do allegedly. It's not an eye for an eye system.
Right.
All I can do is they can tell their story and a jury decides, listen, you've been harmed. This is how much I think the harm is worth. So people say, oh, this is just about money and, it's the money grab. Like that's the only option that we have. If you've been harmed by your employer, if you've been hurt by someone, even if the police kill someone, if it's an accident, it still might be negligent. I mean, all you can get is money. Now, obviously, look, if you're talking about criminal conduct, that's an entirely different story. But most of these cases that we're talking about, it's just not criminal. It's civil. And civil, the remedy is money.
Now you do a lot of commentary. So have you heard about this Disney lawsuit that's out, people are talking about right now? Somebody
What lawsuit are we
This
talking
is
about?
the one about the water slide that the lady it was well, okay, so the press is saying, it's over a wedgie,
Oh, this is the wedgie one.
I mean, this person had like their intestines go where they weren't supposed to. That's like
Yeah, I did. I did read about this one. This is just in the past day or so.
yeah.
I did read about this. What I will say is, look, I represented Disney, and I've been on both sides. I can say that, listen, jurors really like Disney. At least here in
Mm,
California, where I am, they tend to win a lot of the time. So I'm not saying that the wedgie didn't happen. I'm not saying that the person wasn't hurt. They may well be hurt. It might be a completely legitimate
mhm.
case, but Disney's one of those defendants that jurors like. So that's the type of case that go to trial. You better have your experts that are going to support what you're saying because if the jurors think it's just a wedgie, it's not a good case. Obviously, if there's that abdominal issues, GI issues. I mean, if there's serious medical problems caused by this and there's a failure to warn, then it is a good case.
Yeah, as soon as I saw like the way the media referenced it, my mind went straight back to McDonald's and coffee, and I went, that was one of those cases that when I learned what it actually was about, I was horrified.
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize. I mean, that McDonald's coffee case, that was serious burns and real serious injuries. It's not like, you spilled some coffee and you got your clothes dirty, you gotta go dry clean them. I mean, you know, I think the insurance industry and these corporate defendants, they have a lot of money
Mhm.
and they spend it, trying to argue that all these cases are frivolous. And look, I'm not saying there aren't some frivolous cases. Like people lie, people do things for money. We as lawyers try to vet through that. And like I said, hopefully that's in the 90+% of cases we reject. But there are some people that are really, really hurt by corporations and their lives are forever changed. And they're entitled to justice and not, you know, anything less. Because I'll tell you this, I mean, Brittany,
Mhm.
every single one of my clients, every single one, at the end of the case, no matter how much money they get, they say, you know what, Neema, I would give this all back if this never happened. If I
Oh.
didn't feel pain, if I didn't have to suffer the rest of my
Yeah,
life.
no,
Well, I mean,
absolutely.
there's no dollar amount. I didn't lose a loved one. I didn't have to suffer this embarrassment, this harassment, this discrimination. So, you know, I would be wary of corporations that try to avoid responsibility by trying to frame all these clients as frivolous.
Are there any companies that you think do the right thing usually? Like you could say offhand, like these guys usually handle things correctly.
Yeah, I will say that there are some companies that I've never sued. They have really good compliance in place, right?
Okay.
There's some companies I sue a lot more because they'll just cut corners and they don't care, about sexual harassment training and racial sensitivity training and kind of doing the right thing that's required by the law. Same thing with, certain insurance companies. There's some that when you make a claim, they pay the claim. And I've never had to sue one of their clients because they do the right thing. There's some insurance companies that will lowball or deny the claims, and we got to sue them all the time.
Mm,
So it's really kind of a top-down thing, and it depends on the defendant, depends on the company.
okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think as like a regular person, it's kind of scary. And I know a lot of people just opt to quit or, leave a company because the idea of having to get an attorney and do what your team would need to do for them just seems financially impossible for regular people.
Oh man, lawyers are so expensive. When I was doing defense work, the monthly bills were sometimes millions of dollars a month.
Wow.
Now, not to say our cases would be that much, but look, lawyers, even the cheapest lawyers are going to cost you thousands of dollars. And that's just the bottom line, minimum, minimum. Start going to trial, tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, what we do is we don't charge anything up front. We're only paid if we win.
Okay.
So we have an interest in the case. And if there's any costs, court costs, experts, everything, we advance all that. So if we accept your case, you're not going to pay anything out of pocket. If we lose, well, we'll lose once in a while, rarely, but we lose. We absorb all the costs. The client will never ever be out of pocket. They don't have to pay us for attorney fees. And if we win, then we get paid. And the costs are repaid, but we advance everything. So, I tell folks that obviously, hiring a lawyer is an important choice,
Mhm.
but at least if you're hiring us, the finances aren't something that you have to worry about because it's a no risk situation to you.
Hmm. Now, since you deal a lot with people who are working, do you have advice for people who might find themselves in that position? Like you feel like your lawyer your job did something that they shouldn't have, whether it be discrimination, violence, anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. My number one advice in any type of case is contact a lawyer.
Mm,
Most of them in our space, they will offer a free
mm,
consultation. Okay. Trying to handle a case on your own, it can be a fender bender, it can be a workplace issue, dog bite. It's the worst thing you could do. Just like, I don't know, I'm not going to go fix my own car. I'm not going to go, clean my own teeth. And, it just, I think a mistake people try to handle these claims on their own. Look, I get it. People don't like lawyers as a distrust of
Mm-hmm.
lawyers. But we really kind of want to make, and the reason I do a lot of what I do, the commentary and the social media is I want to make law understandable. I want to make it accessible. And I want people to pick up the phone, if there's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the problems we see are employers or companies, insurance, or otherwise that take advantage of people when they're not represented. So that's my number one advice. Talk to a lawyer. My number two is if there is an issue at work, you got to document it. You got to report it to HR. A lot of the claims are based on notice, right? So if something's going on behind the scenes, someone's being racist, someone's sexually harassing you, and the complaint doesn't happen or it's verbal, it's not the same as a written complaint. So those are my two pieces of advice. Consult a lawyer and make sure everything's in writing.
All right. Now, I want to pivot a little bit because one of the things that I think both you and I care a lot about are wrongful imprisonment in the United States, and I definitely would like to talk to someone about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as a prosecutor, my greatest nightmare was to put an innocent person in jail. I was a big believer in Justice Blackstone's theory, and he was a judge way back in the UK many years ago, but he said that it's better that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent person suffer. And obviously, it was the olden days, so they're talking about men, but,
Mm-hmm.
if I had any doubt in my mind about a defendant's guilt or innocence, I would not prosecute that person. Now, I'm not saying all prosecutors are the same, and innocent people are convicted in this country all the time. And there's guilty people that get away, and there's guilty people that say they're innocent when they're not innocent. So, I hope that, if there's any prosecutors out there listening or law enforcement types and they have any doubt, listen, just do the right thing. It's better to let the person go than to wrongfully convict an innocent person.
Now, are you connected to any of the organizations that work on that right now? Obviously, everybody knows the Innocence Project, but there's a lot of other ones too.
Yeah, I mean, they do great work. I don't do any criminal work anymore. I'm one of the few prosecutors that I don't touch criminal
Okay.
defense. Um, so I'm only doing civil plaintiffs work. But yeah, I mean, I will represent victims if they've been wrongfully accused and exonerated and because of police misconduct. So, we do have some cases that have like a kind of a criminal component, or the DA's office is prosecuting um, the person who's responsible for like a sexual assault or rape or something to that effect. But I'm just not doing criminal defense work because even though those people are innocent, I just like being on offense. It's just a personal decision as opposed to being on defense.
Hmm. Well, it feels like I think I saw something recently that said that something along the lines of like only 3% of criminal cases are ever closed. And that just feels like a real breadth of cases that are criminals are just doing things. I mean, how do we get better
Yeah, I
at
mean,
that number? How do we
yeah,
do better at getting more convictions and not messing up?
I mean, you're talking to a former prosecutor, right? So,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people should be prosecuted. I think a lot of cases aren't prosecuted that should be. I think if you break the law, you know, there should be some accountability.
Mm.
So if you're talking to someone that thinks there should be more prosecutions, I'm on that side because I think it's important to keep to keep people safe and to make sure that perpetrators, pay a price for what they've done.
And I guess I have to ask this because I feel like it's the same kind of question I would have asked my parents. How do you feel about executions?
It's hard, I think on one hand, like I said, you never ever want to execute an innocent person, right?
Right.
That's like the worst of all. And the problem, so in theory, yeah, if someone like kills my wife or my kids, I would want them to die.
Mhm.
The question is the death penalty from like a public policy reason? So that's me personally,
Mhm.
right? If you ask me, someone hurts my wife and kids, I want them dead.
Right.
Not life in
No,
prison.
absolutely.
Um, so then the question is, okay, are innocent people ever sentenced to death?
Yeah.
Is there a racial component, right? Where disproportionately black men are put to death,
Mm-hmm.
or people of color.
Yep.
Are death penalty qualified lawyers getting the resources that they need?
Mm.
Or jurors considering mitigation? So it's really tough. I'd say personally, all about it, but from a public policy perspective, I totally understand why people in states like mine, like California, people in the legislature, people who are prosecutors, they don't believe in it. It's one of those things I really do understand both
Yeah,
sides. And the
no.
second is for public policy and criminal justice reasons.
Yeah, I feel like in, cases, the big ones, like, the big serial killers from the 70s, where they had, just giant piles of evidence that could all be, definitively linked. Totally understand that one. But on the other hand, like you said, I mean, when we know that there are people who don't get a fair shake because they're poor, or they're an immigrant, or they're a part of a marginalized group, then my brain goes, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah, and you really would want it to be for the worst of the worst,
Mhm.
and not just because. And again, I'm not saying that anyone's making decisions for racially motivated reasons, but I mean, we can talk on racism is real,
Yeah.
implicit biases are real. I mean, it would be naive for me to ignore all that and just say, yeah, justice is colorblind. I wish it was. I mean, I'm an Iranian American, even though I was born here. I've dealt with racism
Mhm.
myself at the Department of Justice. So, I understand the arguments on both sides.
No, I definitely do too. It's just I think it just is always whenever I see these cases pop up with someone, 25 years, 20 years, and there was absolutely nothing behind it. It just hits my heart. Like, here's a person who lost a huge chunk of their life. And there's no restitution
Yeah,
for that. Like, what could you give that person that would make them happy when you stole a third of their life?
yeah. If you're talking about the folks that are convicted, that are
Mhm.
innocent, yeah. I mean, it's incredibly sad, and it's a miscarriage of justice. And it's just like I said, my nightmare as a prosecutor so far. No one's ever come back for more than 1,000 people and said that they were innocent. Thank God. Or they've said they're innocent, but no one's been proven
Mhm.
innocent, or there's been no kind of credible claim of innocence. But no, it's a huge problem. On the other side, think of all the victims that have lost loved ones.
And
That
never got
those
any
cases have never been
justice.
solved. Yeah, yeah, cold case killers,
Yeah.
and so it's. I wish I had an answer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as lawyers, we're in the business of misery, and I cover these murder cases every week, different ones, terrible, terrible cases. And it doesn't make it any easier when I hear the victims, the loved ones who could understand, they testify how important their children, their spouse, their sibling was to them.
One of the things that I saw you comment on fairly recently was parents of school shooters are getting felony charges now. I'm very much for it, honestly. I think
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's something that I've been talking about. Obviously there was the biggest case really is the Crumbly case in
right,
Michigan,
yeah.
but there's the case in North Carolina where a 6-year-old got a gun.
The
So we're
teacher,
seeing it more and more now. Yeah, a teacher was shot. I mean, God, it's so hard to be a teacher as is. You're working for not a whole lot of money,
you're
Brittany. I
talking to a
know, I
preschool
know. I'm a
teacher,
graduate.
Neema.
I know. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're doing God's work, but it's not for a lot of money.
I
So I know
love
it,
my
and then
students,
I have
but
to
I
deal
would
with violence.
love a good
Yeah,
paycheck.
yeah. So to kind of put yourself at risk of being shot on top of it. Now, I don't think preschoolers are going to be shooting you, but being a teacher is not an easy job. So, I think on one hand we're seeing a little bit of a shift in prosecutors,
Mhm.
and we've seen this in different types of cases, right? So, historically, prosecutors, they're risk averse. They don't want to lose. They're expected to win every time.
Right.
That's why for years in this country, you didn't see police officers prosecuted
Right.
because I mean, look what happened to Rodney King, right? I mean, the officers are acquitted the first time around, then the feds retry the case, and then I think they get 2 or the 4. But I mean, the defense verdict rate in police misconduct cases, I mean, defendants would win all the time, and prosecutors don't like
Well,
losing, and they don't like
yeah.
taking tough cases or representing, rape victims, right?
Mm.
Because oftentimes it's a he said, she said, sometimes it's a delayed report. But we're seeing a shift right now. Prosecutors are being more aggressive. They're taking on difficult cases if they're righteous cases, right? So I think some of it is that, but really, and this is an interview I did with Fox, I think one of the big differences we're seeing is just there is a lot more evidence right now.
Mm.
So I say, would Derek Chauvin have been prosecuted for George Floyd if the whole world didn't catch it on
Yeah, if there
camera?
were at least 20 different
Maybe not.
angles of the
Yeah,
crime, yeah.
maybe not. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe it'd be a free man
Well,
right
I mean,
now.
I
And I
remember
think in some of these cases,
Baltimore. Do you remember
oh,
that
sorry, go
case
ahead.
with the guy whose neck, what is his name?
Yeah,
I mean, his spine was severed because he wasn't properly secured in the back of the vehicle. That was a huge case.
yeah. That's I'm a huge believer in body cams for all police officers. I like cameras
And
everywhere.
they should
Cameras in the
never be
courtroom.
turned
Everything should be.
off, ever.
Never, never. I mean, it protects the officer, it protects the public, defendants. But, kind of going back to your question, I think the reason we're seeing these prosecutions more and more is because there's more evidence,
Mm, okay.
You have the Crumleys buying their kid a gun, I think it was for Christmas, right,
Why?
or the holidays, posting it on social, posting it on
Of
Facebook,
course he did.
a 16-year-old kid, and so you're seeing more evidence in these cases because of social media, because of cameras. That really gives prosecutors a little bit of an advantage. I don't think that case would be prosecuted had there not been so much public information
Mhm.
about Ethan. The school told the parents, hey, he's searching for ammunition on his phone, he's drawing these kind of terrible things.
Mhm.
So once the parents are on notice, they can't say, well, we didn't know. Like, how can we be responsible? Because normally criminal conduct, it's not like civil. Like in the civil context, Lizzo is liable for the misconduct of her employees.
Mhm.
That's just as a matter of law. You're the boss, you're responsible.
Right.
But that's on the civil side. Criminal, it's all about your own conduct,
Okay.
right? So, like, what did you do? And in this particular case, look, the parents were told that the son is dangerous. Hey, do you want to get him? Do you want to give him some mental health treatment? He's just a kid. And they chose to ignore it. So the argument is, look, you're playing Russian roulette with people's lives and you should be held accountable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the fact that they got called into school that morning and then they were like, "We're not taking him home."
I
You
know, I
could have
couldn't
just
believe
taken
it.
him home.
Yeah.
That would have saved 4 people's lives. At least that day it would have.
And look, if you have a gun, it's your responsibility as an adult to keep it locked up. There's
Yes.
no way your kid, yeah, I mean, your kid should look how many gun deaths there are in this country because kids get access to guns. Look how many suicide. I mean, forget even the accidental, the suicide. There's so many gun-related suicides because kids get access to their parents'
Yep.
guns. I'm not saying they wouldn't have killed themselves some other way. Maybe they would have, but like your job as a parent is you have a gun, you got to keep it locked up,
Absolutely.
and certainly don't buy your kid a gun. Who buys a 16-year-old a gun? I mean, that's just
I get it. People are like, "Oh, we like to go hunting." I'm like, "Well, then this should be a hunting rifle and not a pistol. You don't need
exactly.
a
And if you
pistol to
go
shoot a
hunting with
buck."
your kid, yeah. And if it's legal, you better make sure, like, just like you wouldn't give your kid, a bottle of tequila,
Right.
don't give them a gun, I mean, the laws exist for a reason. You're a parent. You got to be responsible. You got to keep those things locked up and safe.
Mhm. No, I definitely agree with you on so much of that. Well, what I want to say is first, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about? I know you have a book, which you can definitely give a
I do
shout
have a
out.
book. Yeah. Thank you. Brittany, I wrote it during the pandemic. I got to give credit to Nancy Grace. We were talking about, I forgot what it was, another George Floyd or Kyle Rittenhouse, but it was a commercial. And she's like, Neama, you've done all sorts of crazy things. You work for these big law firms and the government and have your own firm. You should write a book. And I'm like, you know what? I will write a book. So my book is called Harvard to Hashtags, my journey from being a Harvard lawyer, representing big companies, government, and now just doing everything I know on social media, right? So we do TikToks, we do Instagrams. You can check us out at West Coast Trial Lawyers. at Neama Rahmani. That's Neama Rahmani. We always do fun things. I just shot a couple TikToks today.
Hey.
And the book Harvard hashtag, every dollar from that book, all the proceeds go to foster children at Children's Law Center. So it's not a moneymaker. I think foster kids are some of the most vulnerable, and they have such a difficult road ahead of
Yeah.
them. At least here in California, and I know this because my wife's in the system. Within 3 years of turning 18, within 3 years, more than 50% of these foster kids, they end up homeless, trafficked, in prison, or dead. They
Actually,
don't have much of a
one
chance.
of my best friends, he did this for a pretty long time actually before he moved on to getting his master's and his doctorate. But his job was specifically to work with kids who are in aging out of the foster system. And they, I think, worked with them until they were 23. They were trying to get it pushed to 24, but essentially help them get to college or wherever they want to go, help them learn all the things that a parent would have taught you. I wish there were more organizations like this across the country because it's so needed.
It really is, and it's so sad what these kids go through. So,
Like, life's
um,
hard enough
so
to
that
not
that's
have
my
anybody
book.
in your corner.
Exactly, without any family support. And you're right. A lot of states, again, things are changing. They're getting better, and they're pushing it out. Like some states are even going as much as 25, but there's others where it's 18. Like you're on your own. So
And what I don't
that's
know.
not
I
easy for
wasn't very
anyone.
responsible at 18. I don't know about you. You were heading to Harvard, so you might have been a little different from the rest of us.
Well, I mean, I had a lot of support from my parents, so I mean, my life would have been completely different if they
Yeah,
weren't
but
around.
18, I was a complete mess. I don't know if I would be able to do it by myself. So, definite respect to your wife for the work that she does because
Thank you. I mean, it's really God's work. So I'm glad that, even though I went to the private sector, she was able to continue doing what she loves and representing these kids.
but yeah, thank you so much for talking to us tonight. And I'm definitely going to keep looking for you. I'm sure I'm going to keep seeing you on TV now that I have a name connected that I spoke to you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of it. So you're like, I see this guy everywhere. But yeah, if there's ever a legal case, you know me, I'm going to be talking about it. I don't care if it's entertainment, true crime, politics. I'm all about it. Or even the own cases we handle.
Well, I think that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us this evening. And for the listeners, you all have a good weekend.
Thanks, Brittany. Thanks for having me.